Oh. I guess, I don't know, it takes a long time for that to sync with that thing, or what?
I have no idea. It seems to vary week to week.
Crazy.
I don't think it's that. It's not that.
Give it a second.
Yeah. Must we may have to ask Sennheiser to come out here and look at this thing.
There's 3 buttons that have to go on.
Well, I think the master just shuts everything off, right?
Yeah,
big
but
red one?
whoever used it last. So you put the master on, but somebody else would turn those other 2 off. So
Okay. They all went off. Huh?
try again.
Magic. Okay.
Yep.
There it goes.
Yep.
All right. Well, welcome to the Selectmen's meeting of Monday, the 19th of July, 4 o'clock. We have 2 presentations before we get to the rest of the agenda. The first presentation will be from Amanda Blair and Evan Griswold concerning open space. So if you'd like to come forward, we could move the microphone and you could... Very good.
We have some handouts for you.
All right. Thank you.
Pictures. Yes, she can pass. This is the first one is on the Ames open space. And here's a hiking map and our, well, I have 2 of these, survey map. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for seeing us, and as you are aware, there have been issues with beaver activity on the open space property, the Ames property, off of Riverwell Road. And we have investigated a non-lethal solution to keeping the water levels at a respectable height. We had some issues a few years ago when the water level got very high, and the town public works crew had to bust through the culvert under Riverwell Road, and that was effective for several months, but then the beavers returned, and we got the same issue back again. So we have investigated we've also been experiencing some vandalism on the beaver ponds on open space, which we want to keep because
dams.
they are part of the natural habitat, and they also, it's a great benefit to the town in many ways. Beavers are sort of nature's natural engineers, and the benefits of having them around is multiple in terms of wildlife habitat, in terms of water recharge, in terms of water pollution control, all sorts of flood control, all sorts of benefits. So we want to make sure that the beavers have a space as well as the people. The non-lethal control is this Beaver Solutions run by a guy named Mike Callahan, and I know, I think you met him out on Whippoorwill Road when we were talking about the culvert, getting the culvert under Whippoorwill Road, which is the town, a town issue. There also happens to be another dam further down Bucky Brook as it flows under I-95, and that's going to be a Connecticut DOT issue. And then there's a third problem on Buttonball Road by the railroad bridge, just up the road from the railroad bridge, right off the Bartholomew open space. So we are proposing that we have Mr. Callahan come in and erect what's commonly known as a beaver deceiver, which is a combination of fencing
I got that one.
and
No, it's
pipe-
a new one.
Oh, this is one?
There's 2 invoices.
and piping.
Oh, this is a fun ball.
Yeah.
There's 2 types of methods that he's doing.
So they're essentially you build for Buttonball is simpler. You build a fence out 10 or 12 feet out from the culvert itself in a certain figuration, and the beavers can't get at the culvert to plug it up. And if the water gets too high, it simply goes over what they put against the fence and still goes through a free-flowing culvert. So the roadway is protected.
Where's the dam on the Buttonball at this?
Yeah,
gate?
right at the road.
Okay.
There's a culvert under the road that goes on to what was, I think, the Swaney property.
Yeah, probably.
And I think that was recently sold because I met somebody who said he was the owner and had been there about 4 months. So it's, but he was happy to have the beavers there. He thought they were,
And it goes across underneath and
goes
flows
underneath
into
the road
Black Hole.
and down into the Black Hole River.
This is a recent beaver because Ed in Public Works had to go and break up the dam because it was flooding the roadway and brought it to our attention. So we went over, and then when Mike Callahan was out for a second visit recently, he looked at that. And since it's on open space, he gave us a quote, and we have open space funds for that. But the Whippoorwill Road one is, it was broken a couple of years ago by the DOT, the state, because I was there. We were trying to break it. And they said, they noticed how high the water was. And they said this was on town property. It was up to the town to take care of. And so that invoice would be, if the town wanted to go ahead and do, that would be a town expenditure. And Mike Callahan also said by working with DOT and breaking that first one on 95. The only thing I wanted to point out to you on the survey map is that culvert is under the town road, and that's town responsibility. But this little strip of land is state of Connecticut. And the beaver deceiver comes out into the waterway. So I just wanted to point that out. It's not on open space land, but it's more on state land. So I think you may have to talk to the state on that. Especially since they have the other one that's blocking, it creates that effect that this one's blocked, and this one's blocked, and this one's, so you'd have to open them all up.
So where we looked on Whipplewell,
That's right.
is that here?
Here's the bridge.
That's a bridge over 95.
And it's right before there. So this line here, and you can see it on your map. You see how the line angles off?
Yeah,
Ames, you see how it angles up along 95. Mm-hmm. So that's not open space land. That's not town land. That's part of this DOT, state land, the highway.
Town road, I guess.
It's a town culvert, and it abuts state property, and it's not on open space. So.
But we are.
But it affects us.
Yeah, we would be. There's a little bit of maintenance that's done maybe annually, maybe a little more depending on the beaver activity. But the Open Space Commission would, because so much of the watershed upstream from that culvert is in town open space. I think it would be our responsibility to.
Do you think we would need DOT permission to install the deceiver under Whipplewell?
I don't know that you'd need permission. I think but it probably would be a good idea, since it is would be on state land, to at least inform them that that's what's happening and that it's necessary in order to protect.
You think they would have an appetite for installing one under I-95?
My guess, Tim, is that they have been. This has happened before all over the state. I mean, the beavers have really come back after a couple of 100 years of being absent, and our civilization has built roadways and houses and septic systems in former beaver habitat, and so when the beavers have come back, naturally they go back to where it's suitable for them to live, and they've flooded. I think they flooded a lot of culverts, and my guess is that on 395 and 91 and all over the state, there have been issues with beavers plugging culverts. So my guess is that the DOT would not be surprised to find that this is a situation that.
I mean, if we're hiring this fellow, maybe they would join in and pay for one under the 95.
Yeah.
There is grant money available, and we're going to be putting in an application for the grant. And if you want us to, we could include,
I'm not sure.
Didn't we apply for some grant? Not too.
I had brought that to the board's attention about a year and a half ago about the grant money after attending one of my seminars.
Yeah.
It's included in the packet. So, and we'll contact him because we may have another one over on McComb.
We're not sure that it'll pay for the whole thing.
No, but anything's better than nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And another thing I just want to mention, because twice now we've had vandals destroying the dams. And our policy that Open Space has adopted is as long as it's not affecting private property, we will let the beavers be. Well, no one has contacted us. We've written letters to an abutter we thought might be, and haven't heard anything. However, when the dams were broken, we got a lot of flack saying, "What are you doing?" I said, "It was nothing to us. The neighbors support us in keeping the beavers, dams up in the water. They like it, and now they have mud flats attracting mosquitoes, so they are not happy." So it seems to us that the best way is if we got the deceivers and let the water flow, it keeps everything status quo, and the neighbors and the vandals hopefully will respect it.
Well, it seems like a pretty good balance for both sides.
It does. It really does.
But my one question was, what about the DEP? Is this permitted? I know they were trying to get the alewives to come up Bucky Brook.
Yeah.
Would this be blocking the alewives? Will they give us permission?
Not necessarily, because the pipe, the culvert is there may be some water still going through the culvert, but it'll be, it'll simply not, the beavers won't have access to the culvert to plug it up. They won't be building a dam inside the culvert, which is what they've done now. And so there will be water flowing through, and if there's if you look at the specs on the 6 inch, an alewife probably would be able to get through that.
Okay. I was like curious.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know the answer. Aren't the alewives, weren't that up there around the Jericho Preserve? Wasn't that where they were doing the,
But that brook goes to there, so
right,
that's where,
right. But I mean, but it was coming down. Yeah, no, I don't.
Yeah, they come up Black Hall and they go underneath the highway and up to Black Hall Pond.
Yeah.
Well, but if it's blocked with the beaver dam, how they get up anyway?
Well,
I agree.
Somehow,
Does DEP, okay, we got something blocking it here, now we're going to try this, and they're going to be upset.
my thought is that beavers and alewives have been coexisting for millions of years, and or at least hundreds of thousands of years. And so we come along and say, well, the alewives can't get over the beaver dam. Somehow they find a way.
Before, it'd be nice that, we don't spend all this money, and the DEP says, oh, you can't do that.
Oh.
That's what I'm saying. It's
I see.
Yeah.
Is it, how the state agency works. One says it's fine.
Well, we can certainly ask Mike Callahan how he approaches that issue, because I'm sure he's run into it.
Oh, I'm sure.
Before.
We just got the bid packages, and so we'll be going, I think, to wetlands next week to go for the one on Button Ball. And we'll see. We have a couple contacts with Deep. We'll follow up on that, and ask Mike Callahan. And Mike Callahan has been out here, several years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, in a different administration, looking at this site. So when we contacted him, he says, "Oh, I've been watching that site," and I go, "Good to know you got eyes on it."
Well, I vaguely remember the cost of the estimate at a year and a half ago was about $1,200, and now we're looking at
Well,
$1,800. I don't think it's that bad.
There are a couple different options in there, and one was to do 2 of them, but we had indicated to Mike that we wanted to keep our levels up on our open space, so only one was necessary, and then if you want to include the maintenance package in it, and then if we have multiple sites, maybe you could do better, or maybe Public Works could. I mean, I don't really know how much work there is to maintain it, but Ev and I were in another pond this morning, so maybe we'll be cleaning up. Who knows? So.
And I remember the grant at the time was about $1,000. Is that what you're hearing now?
Yeah, but also Gateway has indicated, we've been working a lot with Gateway, and they have monies for it. So it might be another way to, and especially if we were tying 3 or 4 in together, because as I said, we think we have one on McCulloch now, so that we're pretty sure. And so when Mike Callahan is down, we could look at that.
He's certainly the expert.
Busy Beaver. Yes. So I think you would probably have to go through wetlands like we would, but anyway, we voted at our last meeting to go ahead with the one on Button Ball, so we're going to proceed. We had in our budget. So.
And the nice thing is that at least the owner is Mike Callahan from Beaver Solutions claims that they're 99% effective.
And he guarantees his work, so which is nice.
But it depends on proper maintenance, but I think we can find it. I don't think it sounds terribly onerous. It's just clearing out some brush around the fences, and once or twice a year. And I think it's worth doing so that we can coexist with the beavers.
It's interesting, everywhere we go where there's a beaver dam or there's something like this going on, and we're out there and people always come and say, what are you doing? When we introduce ourselves, say, oh, I've been watching that. And they're so interested that I almost think the neighbors are going to be the people that are monitoring these, events.
Well, we've also set up some cameras, some critter cams on the Ames property to see if we can capture some beaver activity at night, which is when they're most active, from dusk to dawn, and then they hide away in their lodges during the day, for the most part. But dusk and dawn is when they're most active.
So we're catching a lot of activity, not necessarily beaver.
Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of deer.
Yeah. Any questions or anything?
So you don't need a leveler pipe, I guess, is that?
Not on button ball.
No.
We have a key. The
This
second one on.
Would that be this device?
I think that was with your packet. Yeah. Ours was a Keystone one.
Because it shows a 0 when you talk about the pond leveler pipe.
He was the fence and pipe flow device, I think was what.
Domed intake fence?
Yeah, that's the one that would be. You could add another. He suggested adding another pipe because of the size of the watershed, but I don't think we necessarily need to. There's nothing we're really protecting upstream except for the trail on the Ames property that we've already closed.
He listed the price, but I don't think he put a 0 quantity, so it's not in there, I guess.
He's doing that optional, so yeah.
And it says town supplied pipe. You take off $612. So that would be that corrugated black.
Mm-hmm. And it comes in different
diameters. 10, 12, or 15.
Yeah.
Did the land trust also use something for something?
I think they've talked to him, but I don't know that they've done anything. They've contracted with it.
They've done some things because the first invoice came in for the land trust, and I said they always confuse us. So I said, Mike, you got to put open space. We're not paying land trust bills. So. A lot of people know his group.
So you might not be doing the maintenance 400 either, right?
We're gonna do a look-see,
So do you need external funds, or does open space
No,
have?
I think with our carryover.
Famous carryover.
The famous carryover.
Because you have then button ball, depending on what's in and out. That's $17.75, but I don't know if all that stuff would stay in the final proposal, because there's another annual maintenance there.
I think we could build that into our budget. I think we'd have to monitor it and see, and I think Mike would be willing to work with us.
And if we can find there may be volunteers on the land trust, on the open space committee, commission that would be willing to spend half an hour twice a year taking sticks off the fence.
But I think we had a pretty hefty carryover. We're doing hoping to do the roadway to the second parking area on McCulloch. We have I don't know if you heard, we got the approval from the court on that, and we're just waiting for a town meeting to schedule that. So that's all done. And then we have for the beaver deceivers, and then we had voted at our last meeting to approve to pay for the work to be done on the affordable housing or the building envelopes on the McCulloch property, and to prove that they're building lots. So we took that upon because that would settle a lot of questions we felt after you pointed out, what we needed. So we've engaged Dick Gates he's already done a survey on that originally that was filed when we purchased McCulloch, and he's going to flag it. I talked to Tom Metcalf this morning. He's going to file an application with wetlands and go down and do, with Jim Mildren, do the test hole sites, and Snarsky's involved flagging any wetlands. So we hope to have that back in the next 6 to 8 weeks to give it to the Affordable Housing Commission. So since they have no budget and we had our carryover, we said we'd pay for that. Well, we'd like our 100,000 back too, so it was another way to push this along.
Yeah, we figured the investment in Metcalf, Gates, Snarsky, Milburn would come back to us on the sale of the lots, or whatever administrative transfer happens to add, because we already paid 100,000 for it.
Yeah. So you need to go to wetlands for this?
For ours, I think.
Okay. And once that's approved, then you just decide what you want out of the menu here.
And then when he's down, we'll have him look at McCulloch too, which may, or we'll tell him before, and maybe he can, but we'll be looking for grants. Because we can afford to do one, but I'm not sure if we can do two.
Yeah, they may not let you put it in and get it later. I don't know. If you install it and then apply for it, it might not be retroactive.
Well, we're going to look into his, and then one of our commission members is on Gateway, so they look.
Gateway too, yeah.
Yeah, so they're funding a lot of the Phragmites studies. Up and down the Connecticut River.
Is that DEP that does that? Yeah.
DEP has grant money?
They used to.
For Phragmite?
No, Beaver.
Oh, beavers.
Yeah.
Which
So
department?
we can look into that.
Yeah, which one?
Department of Wildlife, I would imagine. Fisheries and Wildlife.
I didn't realize DEP had money for beavers.
It was a program, this was about a year and a half ago, and then Mike was involved in it too, so I don't know if he was.
I'll ask him about it.
Yeah,
I'll just go directly to Mike and ask him. Because it may have been his program that he was on. I was just.
It might have been, and I know he does work in Massachusetts also, so he may be conflating the two states, but there was
Yeah,
a program.
I'll ask. Yeah, I'll follow up on that. Thanks, Mary Jo. Yeah, good to know.
Okay, so you really don't need anything specifically from us. This is informational. And, do you want us to try to contact somebody at DOT about the I-95?
I think it would be beneficial to all of us if their contact was made to DOT, because they have the bigger dam, and it's 90% filled, that culvert. And when that's 100, we're going to... And
That
I
could
don't
back up.
Yes, and so
that culvert actually backs up through the culvert at Whippoorwill and onto open space land. So the water level on the open space land is now not dependent on any blockage under Whippoorwill, because that's been removed. But it is being backed up by the dam inside the culvert under 95.
and it will back up on private property at one point,
Yeah.
because I can't, Mike, the abutter on the open space, it'll affect his property first. So.
Very good.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thanks. Next, we have a presentation from the Halls Road Improvement Committee, Edie Twining and Howard Margulis.
Who do you want to? I'll just pull this one back and show you the cameras. Right.
Good.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay, so what we're presenting is what the BSC group has put together for us. This is their Halls Road Master Plan report. It's a fairly long report. That's all 3 phases that were included in this project. They are still calling it a draft because we've still got some work to do on zoning, which will, take place with the assistance of the zoning board. But for the most part, this is complete. We worked very closely with them and got a lot of good feedback from them. I thought that we had this on the Halls Road website, on the town site, but it didn't get put up. I'll talk to Michelle tomorrow morning and see what became of that. I thought I saw it there, so that's why I'm a little confused. But I'm just going to skip through some of these things. So the first page, of course, is the executive summary talking about the 2 different parts of the project. There's the public right-of-way, and then there's the private redevelopment, which the only thing the town would have to do with is using that as a tool to help with rezoning. But the public right-of-way is much more centered towards creating a safe pedestrian bike route and adding in lighting and landscaping, open green spaces, sidewalks, crosswalks, and the most popular element was the Bow Bridge. And then for the private redevelopment, the village district zoning is something that has been suggested by multiple sources from EDC, from Advanced CT, and also in their original findings in this report. So it was split into 3 phases. The first phase was existing conditions. They came and did a base mapping report. And one thing I wanted to show you was, so this heavy purple dotted line here is the right-of-way, which is what the public improvements part will have to do with. And the good news is it's a very wide right-of-way. So there's a lot of opportunities here for the town to get things beyond just a sidewalk. This whole idea where, Tim was helping us cut trees down in this wooded lot here and up into possible green space here this is one of the things that have been asked for in multiple surveys. And the thing you're seeing at the top is a section through how wide it is currently, and these 2 pieces here is what the extent of this area right here is. So this is a cross section right in this section. So that gives you a sense of how much extra room we have to put in sidewalks and occasionally have some on-street parking. So that's one of the things that's a positive in this project. They did a existing conditions and analysis. And in their findings, I'm not going to read through all this stuff because it's better read, taking your time with it. But they did come up with the things like there are no real sidewalks along Halls Road. There's minimal street lighting, no crosswalks from north to south sides of the road, no safe bike pathways, 60-foot setbacks from the road create parking lot view of the strip center. And commercial-only zoning is disproportionately, it favors highway services in the current market conditions. So that's kind of a key thing to recognize. And then they split this out to show what their survey had been, just to make sure that they understood where all the streetlights were, where the power poles were,
and where those right-of-ways are fitting into the package. Again, this is something that you can kind of look through more closely on your own computer or on a printed version of this. Down here we're showing where the old Bow Bridge used to be, across the Lieutenant River. The embankments are still there, and this is where this idea of putting a Bow Bridge, a new prefab bridge across that area for pedestrians. Right now, where the sidewalk goes, if you're walking to the shopping areas, you walk across the bridge here, and it's maybe 3 feet wide for a sidewalk there, all along here, and it's extremely dangerous. If someone is texting on their phone and they swerve, they could hit a pedestrian. So this is another reason why it's not optimal to have. There's not really a way to make this a wider sidewalk right now. So that's one of the pieces that they were looking at. So they have details.
That sidewalk would stay unchanged.
I'm sorry.
That likely would not be changed. That sidewalk on
No, that will stay right the way it is. Yeah. It's just that it's not. There's no protection between you and the road. It's really like a breakdown lane practically. So it's not optimal. They do call out in this section about the public way what does exist. That there are crosswalks at the intersection of Lime Street and Halls Road, but they go to no sidewalk basically. They just go. They have curved ramps and stuff, but they don't have a sidewalk beyond that, other than the little narrow one that goes over the bridge. And there's also a crosswalk that goes across Neck Road over to the walkway that goes up to the park and to the Baltimore Bridge, but that's pretty much all you're getting for any kind of walkability of the area. There's no bike lanes currently. People do ride bikes down there, again, at their own risk. They have an information here that said 11,000 vehicles per day go down Halls Road. Pretty interesting. I wonder if that's summer or what.
I imagine it's Sunday when the interstate's closed.
Yeah, and they also are calling out on Huntley Road that the one-way travel is not well marked at the bottom of by Neck Road there. It's a difficult signage situation there. So they took a look at what kind of utilities and infrastructure is there today. There's power lines that are strung above the road. There's very little street lighting, which makes it dangerous for pedestrians, but also difficult for cars late at night. There's not that much lighting on the street. They looked into telecommunications, cable, high-speed fiber optic, and water, which all the water, as we all know, is directly from wells. It's not, there's no water system coming to the Halls Road area. And the sanitary was another thing that I wanted to make sure that they were really helping us understand what our options are. And currently it's all a septic system. There's no sewer system in this area, and the town is not interested in letting that happen. So this is what they were finding in there. But the DEP was saying Water Permitting and Enforcement Division represented that the state has approved several alternative or innovative treatment systems around the state that may provide options for Halls Road project areas. So there are newer versions of septic systems than what we, all think of from the past. So that's.
I guess Old Lime Stores has a packaged one behind.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a raised bed kind of thing. Yes. Mm-hmm. So they do have that, and they have a well, and so it's all up to the developer to figure out how to deal with this stuff, but it has to be done to code and the correct way. So that's a given, but it can be done. They took a photo essay of all the different structures. None of these are terribly earth-shaking, beautiful buildings. And from some of these are things that people have complained about in the past. I mean, I think the shopping area by Big Y is something that was attempted to make a long colonnade so it could be walkable, but unfortunately people rarely walk that path because there's not much to pass by along the way. There's no vital things to look at. And people tend to drive to the bank, to the Big Y, to the liquor store, to the post office. And this whole project is based on trying to encourage a different way of having Halls Road work. The signage also is something that I know that one of our committee members, Dave Kelsey's, looked into the signage and has done another essay on this too. That there's DOT signs and there's private signs. The DOT signs, a lot of them are redundant or repetitive, leaning over, one says one thing and the other says the same thing 5 minutes away. It's like, so that's something that we are working on as a committee to talk to the DOT about maybe cleaning some of that up.
And maybe, does the zoning get into restricting some of the signs that pop up? I know the pandemic has spawned a lot of them, but even before that, there were a lot of
all the little A-frame signs, and I did look into what the ordinance is for that, and those things are allowed for 1 month at a time. They've been up for a year and a half.
Well, even a month though, I mean, you could move it 5 feet in another month,
exactly.
probably.
Yeah. So that, I think that's something that in zoning we're going to hope that we can encourage better signage packages. Right now, some of the restrictions actually promote uglier signs than better looking signs. So hopefully we can get that cleaned up and making it look better. One of the biggest complaints we had 3 years ago walking down Halls Road was in the shopping area by the Big Y, people were complaining that nobody knows they're there because there's no way to get enough signs out on Halls Road. And when you have a typical town with a building and a sign in front of it, you can see who's there. But driving down Halls Road, you don't know that, the subway's in there or whoever's, you just don't know. So that was something that people did complain about. Also the landscaping, there are some mature trees here and there, and there are also a lot of overhead wires, which have caused some of these trees to be poorly shaped. And they are talking about if we put in a new tree package, it's going to be a challenge to find trees that will mature without going into all those power lines. So it'll be a thing to make sure that the types of trees selected are the right types of trees that won't obscure the building signs, but will still feel strong enough to...
Don't forget the tree commission.
I know.
Yeah.
I sent this to them.
Good for you.
There was also a market study done. So this was done by Bartram and Cochrane, which is a national real estate consultant to study the project area. And in the report, they describe what their methodology was and their key findings. And they, given this was done just in the midst of COVID, so we've got all the different variables between internet shopping versus COVID versus, where we are today. And they basically were saying that market rates for general office and retail don't support new speculative construction. Specialty buildings such as non-spec medical offices are financeable as they're a long-term lease to a credit tenant. Also profitable are developments that are retail office on the first floor and residential for 2 floors. The profits from the residential offsets the lower rental rates. So in other words, if you can have the first floor residential and a second and a half floor be residential, you actually could support a new development. But without that residential piece, you're not going to be able to really support the interest of a developer to do that kind of work. Let's see, where am I? Any development will need to resolve the wastewater issues. And these are all pieces that she was looking into. And she did speak with many people in town that between real estate and building property owners. She said as of May 25th, there are no residential units available in Old Lyme that are rentals, and that there's a pent-up demand for rentals. Newer apartments in East Lyme and Old Saybrook have very high occupancies and rents that justify the new construction. So these are just more ways of explaining why residential will work here as opposed to just commercial. So even though it is only 5% unrented in the Halls Road area, vacancies are expected to grow as the 21 leases come due. And then she points out various different buildings and properties that are available at the moment and what can come of that. So I think basically the idea is if we can do a mixed use project here, it will help. And I think what we're looking at too is, we just went through this whole exercise of watching gas stations wanting to open on Halls Road because that's really the only commercial interest there is here. It's, and what are they servicing? They're servicing the highway, and that's not our town, that's the highway. So really that's not what I think the Halls Road purpose is. It's to service the town, not the highway. So by only staying just as commercial, we have very little way of inspiring any developers to buy and develop properties in the Halls Road area. So this is another reason why the change in zoning is key to this. So I think by the end of this, we kind of have this mantra going on where public improvements would bring safe streets with sidewalks, crosswalks, and pedestrian safety, bicycle accommodating pathways, pedestrian lighting, green space for town gatherings, connect the old town to the center of the old town center to the renewed Halls Road, commercial center, pedestrian bridge, and an old bridge abutment to allow non-vehicle access to Halls Road across the Lieutenant River, and also give you a beautiful view of the river, which right now you pretty much don't get much access to that. And also the green space for town gatherings is something that I think as a town we need to make some kind of decision on who in the town gets to take care of that. So that would be something I'm coming to talk to you, Tim, about. And then the private investment piece is to reflect the Old Lyme small town feel in any future development and maintain and enhance Old Lyme's commercial center and address the ongoing need for diverse housing for young and older residents, and to provide new Halls Road Village District zoning to allow mixed-use residential and commercial developments, and provide new options for private property owners as older developments become vacant or outdated. Okay, so that was the first section. The next section is what we have out here in the hallway, which is, there's a lot of text to kind of explain all of this. So part of what the BSC wanted to do was make sure that their proposal reflected the things they knew about that these different grants are interested in providing and want to encourage. So one of the buzzwords these days are complete streets. So it provides a safe and accessible options for various modes of travel for people of all ages and abilities. The intent of complete streets design is to improve safety, alleviate vehicular congestion, reduce environmental impacts, and improve non-motorized facilities. So the whole section in here is explaining why we want to care about the buses. We want to care about making sure there really is a place for bikes to go, and obviously pedestrians and street lighting for pedestrians so that they're safe. You know, the iconic bridge again is something that people have expressed interest in over and over again. And I think the idea that, you know, you watch people walk up and down Lime Street all the time now with very little to get to other than maybe an ice cream or chocolate.
Oh, yeah.
But people like to gather and run into each other, and that's the kind of thing that doesn't happen on Halls Road, which again, with the new sidewalks and with new zoning, you can bring buildings up closer to the road and give people something to look at and to run into each other and have open spaces to gather and go from there. So they have separated these out into 3 sections, and I think, you know, it's probably easiest to go and look either at these yourselves, like, you know, in private, because I think that me walking you through it is going to be obvious. You know, I know like the blue building that is down here, a lot of people have problems with that building. They don't feel like it's a really great way, as a gateway into town. It's a pretty ugly building, and it doesn't really reflect anything about some of the beautiful buildings on this road. So the idea is maybe something could change there. And there's been a lot of rumbling about that property getting sold someday soon, and you know, we don't have anything substantiated about that, but it is likely to change. And the other piece was this idea of putting in some bus stops here so that people could get into town from other parts of town and have a place to pull over and safely get on and off the bus. So, and it also answers the question for some of these grants that are looking to make sure that you're doing your business to help get people in and out of town. So, and this again shows a little closer version of what I think of as more the sort of the pretty path in Old Line to Halls Road. But there's, and then this is, so that here would be the pedestrian bridge, and up here we have, there's a culvert that comes from the Lime Art Association. There's a stream here, and it goes down underneath Halls Road. So it has to be cared for somehow. So the idea is to put a boardwalk across here that would be elevated across that stream, so we don't have to, you know, it would reflect what the bridge details look like. And then, so then the last section, I know this is just the second half of this thing. So this is the potential private redevelopment plan, and some of the pieces to this, you know, I think people have gotten confused in thinking that the town of Old Lyme was going to build buildings, which of course we're not. We're just doing sidewalks. And the private development, the most we're offering is new zoning to allow them to be more encouraged to build something that might be close to the street as opposed to 60 feet back from the street currently. And the change in the zoning will also help, along with the new pedestrian ways, that the town of Old Lyme is interested in changing and making things happen here. And right now I know we have a fairly bad rep of being stodgy and we never change and nobody wants anything new to happen. And meanwhile, a lot of people in town are like, but it could. You know, I think a lot of people are like, why is that? You know, but I think that's where this work is trying to help alleviate that question of, you know, we're not interested in putting our head in the sand and saying nothing will change because we know it will change. So this is, again, the whole reason the master plan was funded was to help see the future and have something ready so that when things change down the road, we've got something in place. Again, this cuts it into 3 different sections so you can see it a little closer up. These are just suggestions of what could happen. I'm actually going to go back here. So one of the things in here, so we know that all of this is owned by one property owner, this is another set, this is another, and then it goes down this way. And Halls Road, I mean, one of the biggest questions we get is, what are you going to do when there's a traffic jam on the highway? Can you fix that? And honestly, there is no way to fix that. There is no way. I mean, unless you want to change the entire geography somehow, you can't fix that. It's always going to happen no matter what you do. But if we have this as the main street and people can walk along in here, the hope would be that the private property owners might start to connect some of their properties into other streets that could travel down and come out in other ways. This suggestion here would be that the Big Y would change their entry to this end so that you could have parking and safe walking back and forth through here as opposed to coming across this way. And that way you could have a roadway within that property that would come down and connect into the lot here, that's the DOT commuter lot, and have a bus drop-off park here as well. So those are some of the suggestions, but again, it's always going to be up to the developer to do what they want to do. But we would hope they would play with us. So these are the close-up views of different options. This particular slide I think of as sort of the sweet spot of where Halls Road would have the most closely connected street view of, you know, buildings closer to the road. Okay, so we'll just keep going here. And again, this is the view of the new pedestrian bridge. This has to load. It's a very slow slide. Come on. But it's just showing the three different levels of changes. So what we have today, what we would have with the sidewalks, and what would happen if you got buildings closer up to the road. And I mean, one of the nice things about the idea of building some of these things is that as a retailer, you don't ever really want to be closed while you're building a new building. But you could stay where you are and then build a whole new liquor store and a whole new Bowerbird and everything else and just move in. It wouldn't be like you're shut down for 2 months because you don't have a place to live. So those are some of the things that are positive about being able to make those changes. So this was the last phase of the work. That's the action plan. There is a feasibility matrix that explains all the different details of what is possible, what is impossible. And then they have a cost analysis. Again, given what's going on in construction these days, it's a crapshoot what we can say for sure of any of this, but these are some numbers to think about. And the idea is that we go out to get grants, and we have spoken with RiverCog, and one of the things that they were explaining to us was that there's a grant that called LOCSIP. I don't know if you guys know that one.
LOCSIP?
Yeah.
Local Capital Improvement Plan.
Yes, and
it's usually pretty small.
it's a really good local plan, so it's not like federal that you're trying to go through.
Yeah,
5 million.
it's an annual. It's about $50,000 a year for us.
Well, it's more than that. I mean, it's a big grant. It's $3 million that goes out, and then I'm not sure if it's per area or not, but so what the RiverCog guy was telling us was that you can get LOCSIP grants in phases. Like Middletown is on their last phase of their LOCSIP grant. If you've never gotten one before, you have more chance of getting one. So there's a bunch of things. He said they're already backed up till 22, so that gives us some time to get the grant written and applied for in 22. And so he said it's basically a 3-year process to get the grants done and built. So it's you spend the first year, once you get the money to do the design work, then you do an RFP for the construction, and then the next year is the building. So we're talking probably 2025 to see new sidewalks. And along with that, to do the design work, you need to get a land survey, which is probably best to do once you get your money there, so you know you're not wasting the money on something. And so we're working, we have a couple subcommittees in our committee that are working on grants and another working on zoning. So, and for zoning, we're meeting with our little subcommittee tomorrow at 11 with Dan. We've already done a bunch of work on this, but this is the part that makes us still be a draft because it's not fully realized in here yet. So, but I think that takes us to the end of this presentation. Now, if you have questions, yeah.
I just might add a couple of things. When you step back and say, gee, why are we even doing this? Long term, both Advanced CT, BSC, everyone else we talked to said that strip malls as they exist today are just not sustainable long term. And that if you need to move toward a village district where people can be able to walk to the retail, have some kind of housing. We all know we have many housing challenges here for seniors who want to downsize, young people who want to come back, town workers, teachers, or others who can't live in town. So this would potentially give them some opportunities and then keep that whole road very viable, much more viable than it is now. Especially when you add online shopping and retail all over. All these towns are going to be in trouble with small retail. And the long term is the trend toward online shopping is just going to increase. It's not going to decrease. So retail, small retail is going to be challenged all over. Then you add COVID to that, and you really got a challenge. So we're also, if we start to lose businesses, we're going to be competing against all the other towns, Old Saybrook, East Lyme, etc. So we're, from an economic development point of view, we're kind of looking at themes that differentiate us from everybody else. So we're working very closely with the Art District in Charlotte. They have a subcommittee, part of the EDC, and trying to leverage the Arts District and the arts community as an economic driver of town. And the key element here is having that connectivity where people can park either on Halls Road and walk to Lime Street or the other way around. So the long term, that's really going to really give a catalyst to the Arts District, and that's one of the themes that we're looking at of creating long-term economic development around that arts theme. It might not be the only theme, but it's one that differentiates us from our other communities around, so that we could hopefully leverage that and try to build on that where people, other competing towns can do that. So, and then, as Edie said, I think it's really important that right now what we're seeing is anyone looking to come into Old Lyme, especially anything beside, we do have a couple of, that new farm to table, great. But outside of that, as we've seen with the gas stations or the Blue Building, businesses coming in are not looking at it how we can serve Old Lyme. They're looking at it as we're serving I-95, and we're looking at exit 70. We're not even know what town it is. So unless we can do something to change that zoning and attract businesses that the residents of Old Lyme want and need, then we're going to have an issue. So it's not, people say things are going to change, whether we do it or not. And the question is, do you really want to manage it and influence it, or are you just going to let it happen? And I think people have told us they really want to see improvements. You know, we had the advanced CT report, the resident business survey, 65% of people wanted to see some improvement on Halls Road. We had that same kind of response in the SWAT workshops. It was identified in the economic report by Advanced CT, and then all of our open houses, and even a couple of years ago when we had a similar plan to this, we got very favorable feedback. We got favorable feedback in the open houses. We got favorable feedback. I manned a booth at the Summer Festival a couple of years ago. Spoke to 89 people. And so like 87 were, when you showed them something like this, were in favor of it. So I think there's widespread support to have changes on Halls Road.
Thank you, Alan.
Does it seem that with this Halls Road development potential, that one of the big flashpoints was water and sewer? That's still an unknown, I guess, at this point. I mean, if this were to mature, something would have to go. So do the planners say you ought to plan earlier than later?
I think any serious developer is going to look into what they have to do for septic and water in order to consider the project.
Yeah.
I mean, it's their job to know what they're up against on the lot that they want to buy. And there are people interested in developing residential and stuff on Halls Road today.
Yeah.
I mean, they're waiting for the zoning.
Because I think we've always believed that the DEEP is pretty resistant to some of the more up-to-date technologies. When we were working through that beach anti-sewer movement, what alternative systems would DEP embrace? Rhode Island is more progressive, Massachusetts is also. So that would be very helpful if there were some newer type things that wouldn't require a big pipe going to New London.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, community septic type of systems are things. I know that in Chester they've done a bunch of more progressive septic systems. And it's something all up and down in the whole River Quad areas. They're all challenged by the same question of where do you get water, what do you do with sanitary, this is something that has to get addressed, and it has to be done correctly, obviously, because you won't get permission to build a thing if you don't get it right. So I think it's a matter of whether the developer wants to put the money into the development to make what he can make. I mean, I think you probably stand to have a pretty good opportunity, say, in the area where the highway is. If this became a nice set of residential apartments looking out over the marshland, you could probably get pretty good money there. So that might be worth your investment to do the septic system correctly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, it's really, the town's job is really only to make it a possibility, and if there are systems that do exist, then they should be able to find those. So, and another thing that we're looking at in the zoning is making sure that we have charging stations on Halls Road. Because one of the great things about charging stations is it takes at least an hour to charge your car. So you're stuck in this place where you could go shopping, and you could go have a cup of coffee and read a book and do a few things, go down to the river and look at the water. So that's one of the things that we want to make sure gets put in there. That it's.
Plus there's grants.
Yeah, and if there's a traffic jam, you pull off the road, you park for a while, you go into town and do something. But right now that doesn't happen very often. So, and really the kind of retail that I think we can expect, given the circumstances of the internet and everything else, it's going to be more service oriented. It's salons, it's physical therapy, it's bookstores, or things that can actually be worth going through. But like move the bookseller, a section of the bookseller, into a cafe on Halls Road, and you've got no overhead for books, but you can sell a lot more that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would
Very
think,
good.
I think, well, first of all, thank you for coming and talking to us, because I don't know, when we've had an update, it's been a while, right?
I don't believe so. I mean,
Yeah.
this is just fairly new anyway. We've had.
Well, I know they've been working on it for a while, so.
And there was an open house here.
Yeah.
There'll be another one August 8th.
Yes.
Right.
8/8. That's how I remember it.
Really nice to see the master plan come together and provide some visual as well as some understanding of the regulatory requirements and the possibility of what could happen and what the town's responsibilities are, plans are, versus what a developer can take from there. I know for the complete streets, there are state statutes on that, so there are some grants, and I think it's just going to be remarkable to tie it in with the fine arts. And also recreational. I mean, we have the Griswold Preserve right off of one. So there's a nice tie-in with that, something else that we do very well, which is open space and trails and stuff. So it's going to be really awesome for the right-minded individuals, private and public, to come together and keep people in Old Lyme. As opposed to going to other towns.
And I think I've heard multiple times from elderly people, which I'm fast joining, is they don't want to leave Old Lyme, but they don't want to be paying for people mowing giant yards and doing all this extra work, and they'd love to be in a walkable area that they can see their friends stop by. It's definitely, it's a change in the whole attitude of how we want to do our living. It's, it used to be all about the car, and you could drive into a parking lot and have plenty of places to park, and that was all you really cared about. Now it's like, can I just park and walk way over there because I need the exercise? It's a different attitude, and especially our younger generation's getting much more interested in that too. So
It just changed the whole dynamic of the town. If you have the basic commercial center not closing at 5 o'clock and looking like a ghost town. If you have the ability for people to walk, think of Niantic, think of Madison. I mean, they're alive, and they're alive after 5, and the town's alive. And here's 4 o'clock and the 3:30 in the winter. You drive by there, and it's completely closed.
Hartford may still have that problem. 4 or 5 o'clock. Sidewalks roll up, and people go to the burbs.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen our neighboring towns do it well, and you started this conversation with, and people ask, why not here? Well, now you're providing us answers to that. It can happen here.
Right.
The town's invested in this work with BSE and your commissions, so it can happen. It's just going to take commitment and interest and desire, and you guys have given us the seeds to move forward, like all our neighboring towns have.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll make sure this gets put up on the town site too.
Yeah.
And appreciate you giving us some time to discuss this, and I'll show you what we got.
Anyone have any questions or something? I know we covered a lot.
What's the next step? I guess that
The
would be
next step is to get the zoning finished up, or really connected into the board, and also get these grants going. And the grants, I think in order to get the grant written, we'll need to probably hire BSC to do that work, but it's not a giant chunk of money. But I'm also asking him to give me some numbers of what to expect for doing the design work and, land surveys and stuff like that, because we'll need to plan for that for the future. So
Plus
got the finance and
plus we've, as we talked about the signage, you drive down there, it drives you crazy just looking at a million signs. But trying to even get that changed without a master plan is very difficult. You know, we've been told by everybody that the DOT wants to see, you know, where this is going to go long term, and they just don't want to make piecemeal changes. So by having the master plan, you know, we're a lot more likely to get that done too.
Well, I think Rivercog is really, they're great. I mean, they're great over there. They really, they're there to help us, so that's a nice thing to know. I've not really gotten to know them at all, so it's been good.
Yeah. And I think the Commissioner of DOT was talking about just like what Hartford Avenue's doing. They were at a large gathering talking about this type of sidewalk infrastructure, and you know, I bet there'll be good reception for that, particularly since the one we're doing in Soundview follows the first one in Soundview, so there's a pattern. So
yeah,
I think.
And it might take, you know, 3 or 4 different types of grants to get this all to happen, but it's you can apply all you want, apparently.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
and they like being able to say, see what happened in Old Lyme? We did that. You know, I mean, that's part of the reason they give us these grants. So it's, they want to be proud of what we're doing. So we're going.
Yeah. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Okay, we will turn to the agenda. We have on here the 6th of July, the minutes for the 6th, but due to a variety of circumstances, they were not available in time for the cutoff, so we'll have to consider them at our next meeting. I sent them out to the Selectmen, but I think we didn't get them prepared in time for that.
When did you send them? They weren't there today.
Sunday.
This morning.
Yesterday.
You got them?
I got it yesterday afternoon, or whatever, last night.
I didn't know them. And they weren't posted, so.
No. All right. I think with the new system, I'd better verify your email address too.
Okay.
Because, okay, we do have the public hearing minutes for the 21st of June. It's
I have one correction in the first paragraph. It says we met on June 20th. Instead of minutes that I have.
What's the question?
It's a correction to the public hearing minutes from June 21st. The first sentence says we met on June 20th, and it should be the 21st.
Okay.
That's the only change I had.
Is there a misspelling or what?
No, it's the wrong date.
Wrong date.
It says
Oh.
the 20th, it should be the 21st.
Oh.
Do you see that? Right there.
Oh. Okay.
Yep.
Anything else? Well, then we have a motion to approve the minutes of the hearing.
With that correction, so moved.
Okay. Okay. All in favor? Aye. Very good. In Way Communications, we received a letter which was actually delivered by our contact at CIRMA, which is the Connecticut Interlocal Risk Management Agency. That's a division of CCM, Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, and they insure a vast number of Connecticut towns, cities, fire departments, schools, you name it. And we've been customers of that insurance program for years. They have a return of it's called the members' equity distribution, depending on how things go with the finances for the year. And we received a check for $11,705. So she brought the check to us, and we talked about upcoming things that might need insurance and so forth. But it's been a great a great organization for us. So that was a happy note. Okay, Soundview Sidewalks. I might just mention I just received application number 2, so I'll send this out to yourself and Kurt because it would require his signing off on it as well. It's the total is for $47,749, so I'll send that to you and Kurt, and then he can look it over, and then we can process that once your committee, if you will look at it and so forth. So, but other than that, you want to bring us up to date? Anything else on it?
Okay. We last met on July 8th. Our next meeting is to be determined. We're waiting to get some specific cost estimates from the contractor and a timeline for when he's going to, or when they're going to finish the punch list items, which included about 12 items plus some items that the Connecticut DOT audit brought to the contractor's attention regarding some of the sidewalks on Shore Road that weren't built to specs and state requirements. There was about, I'm not looking right now, but about around a dozen items that they need to look at. The developer, or the contractor for the town for design, BSC Group, provided 2 amendments for the project that required the first selectman's okay. The committee approved them. So you should have those for signature.
I'm actually looking for the change order number 1 that was referenced. So I sent an email to Kurt asking about that. I think it's the one for $1,200.
For the curbing. You can't find that?
No, so I've asked him maybe to retransmit it. You know, we switched systems, so I'm not sure. I looked in both, but I gather it would be around the 8th of July.
Yeah, I think, July 6th. I can send that to you. Okay. I believe I got it too. So
is there any other beside the one at this point?
Change order? No.
Okay.
There's a potential, there will be up to, I think, 4 change orders.
Okay.
And as soon as we get the updates from the developer, then we can look and see what we can afford. With the overall budget that was presented to us on July 8th, we're over budget. So we're going to have to make some decisions on what we can do to get the most out of the transit hub development plans, and what we can either budget as a town for or go out for additional grants. And
yeah, we're going to have to really pull together a good spreadsheet on eligible, not eligible, all that stuff. So before we make any major commitments, I think the transit hub number of 49,000 should be fine.
Well, that was the general, and we're fine, and it's all eligible. The additional, I guess you could call it the miscellaneous things that would be nice to have, like benches at the bus station, a bike repair station, some landscaping. Those would be eligible, but it's over the it puts us over the $400,000 with everything. There's nothing that we proposed that we believe is ineligible at that site. Verbally, the DOT is on board with us. But again, our grant is only for $400,000. So some of the other nice to have may have to wait for another grant opportunity, or the town can budget for some of those things.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. Concerning the Soundview sidewalk, the the tree commission is going to have an arborist come to Ferry Road. I forget the date, but it's not too long from now. It might be next week. And the mission will be to look at the various trees that are, let's say, in jeopardy to install a sidewalk, to see how we might work around the root systems and so forth, so as not to damage them, that therefore might cause them to not survive if we put the standard sidewalk in. There are a number of possibilities, so we're hoping that this person will be able to comment on what we can do, and then probably that the committee will be able to make a recommendation about the stretch between Lime Street and Lieutenant River Lane, whether the walk should be on one side or the other side, and have a pretty good plan on what would happen with specific trees. Once you get past Lieutenant River Lane, then obviously we have to be on the north side of the street, and we have talked with all but one owner, and so I think from that standpoint we have a pretty good plan there to, but again, that we'd like to see the arborist comment on a couple of trees in that section of the project as well. Once we do that, I think then we would probably schedule a public hearing so that individuals who don't live on a street would be able to see and hear a little more about the project, and then it would be time to take that input and make a final recommendation to the selectmen. Because of the time that's gone by and likely tree work and so forth, we would have to probably re-examine the budget that exists for that project and decide what the number should be, and have a conversation with Selectmen and Board of Finance if more likely there'd be a change. So that would then set us up. If that can be accomplished by the end of the summer, then I think if all goes well, we would be able to do the construction after Labor Day, probably late September, October, something of that sort. So we have a number of steps to go through, but I think the time should be adequate to get things pretty well understood and build some consensus. And we know trees are a sensitive topic, so we'll have to see where that all leads.
Jim, do you have any meeting minutes or agendas from your meetings?
We have the one, yeah.
You have what one? What one recently?
The last meeting of the committee.
Okay.
Yeah.
When is your next meeting? When is the next meeting?
Well, we're going to have, when we have the arborist, we'll post that, but that hasn't happened yet.
Thank you.
Yep. The transfer station, I don't believe there's any change since we talked about it, but the Board of Finance tomorrow will be, there'll be a presentation to the board by Phil Parjak, our facilities person, and so that we've heard ourselves here, and so that'll be for the Board of Finance. Then, depending on how that works, then we would need to present the transfer station building proposal to a town meeting, and there likely would be some other things for the town meeting as well, but I think the number that we worked on previously is a number that the Board of Finance will be asked to consider. They would not be able to approve it per se. They would if they felt it was worthy, they would hopefully recommend it to a town meeting at a future time, and that would be, I would say, possibly within the month of July, if we can make all things work, because if it's a building to be constructed on site, it will take some time, and we don't want to linger too long, because that means you get toward cold weather, and it's already, that we know the building is not well suited to be cooled and heated, so the sooner the better. So that'll be tomorrow. The American Recovery Plan Committee, I think what might make some sense is to start with some people that come to mind, and then it's going to be an ongoing process, and more people could be added as we go along. But it's tricky because there's so many elements to this, between possibly having money available for local businesses, nonprofits, individuals, as well as some of the other things that are allowed. There are seminars that are now happening amongst different organizations, so I think the group could try to focus on some of these presentations to help us consider what to do. Because when you think of any number of in-home businesses or individuals who would have a worthy argument for help, it would be very difficult for the town itself to do all that. So I think we talked about our social services person. We have probably the Limes Youth Service director, and I should think that our finance director would be somebody that would be good to help us as well. And then we talked about the MCCD. Maybe we could get a representative from that group to help consider business. And this morning there was the Community Foundation of Southeast Connecticut hosted a Zoom where they had a number of people on the call that commented on different aspects of mental health and so forth and so on. And one of the persons who conducted it was from the TVCCA, and I think that's Thames Valley. I forget what the initials stand for, but we do support them annually, and they deal a lot in helping people, say, with heating oil and other kinds of things. So there are undoubtedly groups that are well versed in handling cases. So not that person would be a member of our committee, but at least it would be a place to speak to about how do we approach all this. So we could obviously have representation from the Selectmen, and I think probably, I don't know about a specific rep from the Board of Finance, but we could talk to the Board of Finance and see. We just have to be careful that depending on who we put on, we don't want to have a lot of redundancy, and we don't want to make the thing too big. And there could be some dialogue with other towns and the Council of Government and other entities to say who's doing what, and we can cherry pick good ideas. So I think we ought to probably recommend some of the people I mentioned, and we could maybe next meeting appoint, get going, maybe make a mission statement and get some people appointed with the understanding that we can add people as we go along. I don't know if people have, whether you all have comments on process here, but we do have funds available. Not that we should all of a sudden start funding things, but I think we owe it to everyone to be as well versed as we can. What I might try to do is to just put together a mission statement and some suggested names for us to consider. And if I know you've all made some suggestions, but I think it's worthy of forming a committee with the understanding there'll be a bunch of additions as we go along. Okay, turning to new business, we've put together a resolution in support of Austin Hack and Liam Corrigan, and this would be, I would suggest we have the day of the 24th of July, 2021, which is the actual day that they both will be participating in the men's 8 race in Japan. So what I have so far is whereas Austin Hack and Liam Corrigan are graduates of Lima Lime High School, and whereas Austin Hack and Liam Corrigan are participants in the local community rowing program Blood Street Skulls, and whereas Austin Hack and Liam Corrigan recently earned spots on the United States Olympic rowing team and will compete in the men's 8 starting on July 24th, 2021, whereas the town of Lyme is proud to produce 2 Olympians in the same event. Now therefore be it resolved that the town of Lyme Board of Selectmen extends their congratulations to Austin Hack and Liam Corrigan. We encourage all Olyme residents to watch them compete on July 24th at 7:30 p.m. and cheer them on to victory in the Olympic men's 8 race. And I think the last, now therefore we would designate July 24th as Austin Hack and Liam Corrigan Day in the town of Lyme.
Second.
Very good. All in favor of that resolution?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
We'll doctor it up a little bit and present that to them. All right, we will open it to public comment. So we'll, let's see, I think there's no public in the hall here, so we'll go.
All participants are being asked to unmute themselves.
All right, for those on the phone, would anyone care to make a public comment? I think it's unmuted. Is there anyone on the phone that confirm they can hear us? I'll try it once more just to be sure.
I can hear you.
Oh, very good. Okay, thank you. That's our scribe, huh?
Yes, it is. You can mute us now.
All right, so I gather there is no public comment on the phone, so thank you.
All participants have been muted.
All right, so we'll turn to other business.
I had a couple things. What are our hours down with the Soundview parking lot? You know, to the public and to town thing.
Currently the policy is 8 o'clock for the parking.
Okay. Someone called and said they would close at 7 o'clock one night during the week, and they were taking their kids down to the carousel, didn't have a place to park. So,
yeah,
is that common, or is that just
I think there's some discussion about it. I think the trooper, I believe, believes that a lot of the parking in the lot after hours toward 8 o'clock is related to the pavilion, and that therefore it attracts for a longer duration of time some of the folks who are over there, and they come back to the parking lot, and unfortunately they don't behave as well as they should. I know that the other thought was the parking lot would stay open so that the patrons of the carousel or the shadows and so forth, or even folks wanting to go to the beach and just sit on the beach after dark for a while, although it's maybe not quite dark at 8 o'clock, that would be possible. I think we're going to probably want to hear from the trooper about the situation, because there was one incident not too distant past where somebody who was being arrested actually attacked the officer and caused him to be injured. And so I think there's a feeling that the longer the lot is open for persons at the bars, or that bar, it just encourages rowdy behavior and so forth. So there's a definite conflict between wanting to keep the lot open for good things and then the lot being open, other things happen. There's discussion about how much parking is there. Well, there's certainly street parking if the lot is not open at that time. There's also, I believe the carousel leases a parking lot itself, so it should have adequate parking regardless of what's available on the street. So I don't think that we should just automatically change the hours arbitrarily, and certainly if it's been 8 o'clock and the parking meters basically close off at 7:30, I think if there's to be a change, it's got to be announced. While I understand the police are frustrated with some of the situation, I think we have to maybe put this back on the agenda. I know there's Frank Papalato and I are going to meet and try to work on the fee structure for the parking, which is unrelated to the closing time, but nevertheless, there's a lot of work in Soundview going on trying to figure out what's the proper way to operate. And I think it's really, there's good and bad to this later closing. I think during the pandemic, I think we closed the lot at 6:30, if I'm not mistaken. And so 8, it's a trial, and we're trying to accommodate people. But if it's
well, it was closed at 7, they said, and they got there a little after 7 to go to the carousel.
Yeah, well, the carousel.
Everybody thought it was supposed to be open till 8. So
that has been the pattern. So if it closed at 7, that seems to be a reversal. I think we should be consistent, and if there's a real issue, then we we should talk about it here and make a decision. Because
Well, it's supposed to be open till 8. I think we ought to start, like you said, consistencies, leave it open till 8.
Yeah, that's right. And if we hear from the trooper and say, well, it's not working out too well, that later closing time, then that'll be a decision that can be made then. So I think it should be 8 o'clock until it's changed.
Okay.
So if that happens to a resident, can they call the police to have them come down and open the lot for them? Is that an option? If it gets closed earlier than they should, what is the option for a resident at that hour?
Well, I think if the police are supervising the lot, the whole point of it was there was going to be parking charged up to closing time or thereabouts, and that would help fund the extra police coverage. So if it's closed sooner than that, that would be probably under the auspices of the police. So I think we just have to say, we realize there may be an opinion that it's not working well, but I think the board has to hear the details and then make a judgment on it. Now, if there's some fracas that causes, say, look, we're having a problem here, we're closing the lot today for some reason, that's one thing. But if it's just, we're going to close it because we feel like it, that's different. So we'll get that on the agenda for our next go-around. And once you start hitting August, things start calming down anyway. But
we still have a few weeks left, so.
Pardon?
We still have some weeks left. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this weekend it was kind of glum weather, but it was still pretty active in Soundview, I guess. So.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. That's all I had.
Okay.
Thank you. My first thing is I will be out of town at our next meeting on August 2nd, so I was if
we could change the date if you want.
Well, I was going to ask if we could change, or I would be okay with the board if I called in. I can do that too.
I don't have a problem either one. I mean, one of those times I couldn't make it, I called in. It worked fine.
Yeah, I'm very willing to do that. I just want to make sure that was
checking
okay.
my calendar.
Well, maybe that's a good idea because I do, if there's trouble in River City with the closing time, it might be good to get that in 2 weeks instead of 3 weeks.
Sure.
So, okay, you'll call in then.
I will call in.
So we'll still keep it the 2nd though.
Yes, thank you. And then I wanted to acknowledge and express my appreciation for the town of Lyme in passing their resolution. They worked as a committee and with their Sustainable Lyme group to develop a resolution that just reinforces that the town is going to be looking at their government resources and programs with an equitable lens. So that happened, I believe, the last 10 days or so. So I'm really, really happy for them and appreciate that. And I hope that Old Lyme will join all the towns who have looked at the resolution. In our case, the resolution was entitled that we are declaring racism a public health crisis, but I'm hoping that given the fact that even Norwich is now looking at it, the towns are, I think we're up to 21 towns that have approved a resolution of sorts. So I just want to acknowledge that and congratulate the town of Lyme. moving on, we all received emails from our finance director regarding vacation carryovers concerns for the board to discuss. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Okay. And the list was substantial, and I guess my question on that is, not knowing the background on this, well, why our finance director shared that with us. I'm curious, and what are we as a board supposed to do with that?
Well, there were requests for extra carryover. I evaluated them except for two haven't been fully evaluated. And last year we tried to really get a hold of comp time as well as vacation time, and it was very difficult. This year the comp time is pretty well squared away at the end of the year, and the vacation time, there was some instances where I think there was worthy reasons to allow additional vacation carryover. So I evaluated each of them and talked with the supervisors and got their recommendations and so forth. And so most of them were fairly minor and that they would be used fairly quickly in the new year. And so there are a couple pending that are bigger in nature, and so that's still work in progress.
So are you saying that this board does not have any responsibility towards that at this point?
I think it's a first selectman thing. I don't know that we would, somebody's going to come and say, here's my personal problem. And I think it's a little awkward in a public meeting to say, well, have a list of 5 or 6 or 10 people and say, this is this person's excuse. So unless somebody has a violent objection, I think the carryover, there is provision to have extra. The union contracts even provide for some flexibility. So it's being dealt with, and I think it's being handled. If somebody feels differently, they can talk to me about it, I guess.
I'm trying to figure out why it sounds like Nicole wanted to then make Chris and I aware of the situation, because I wasn't aware of it. And just looking at it quickly, as I recall, the people on that list that were union, they were given pretty much 100%, not all of them, 100% of their requested carryover, because they were union, I guess.
No, because of special situations with somebody out with a medical issue, and therefore people were denied, they had to fill in shifts and so forth, and it came at the end of the year. So I think it's warranted that if somebody, the police they can only take so much vacation from Memorial Day to Labor Day per contract. And if we are down someone, now we have somebody else out on disability, so it's you have 6 people plus the trooper and a couple of part-timers, and look at Soundview. That can soak up 2 and 3 people a shift if you want. So I tried to look at it as what is sensible for the individuals, what's the reason, and if somebody just didn't get to it during the year, you say, well, we have people who didn't vacation, whatever was, could be carried over, to be carried over. But like the police, I think if they were needed to do shifts overtime and so forth to cover, I think that makes it more justifiable.
Yeah, and I'm not looking at my list, but as I recall, the police were like, you authorized their carryover vacation. Public Works.
And the trooper was in agreement with that as well.
Okay. And then the town hall employees that aren't unionized, it kind of went all over the board, a percentage of how much they requested versus how much you authorized. And what was your thinking on that? Is sort of looking at their personal situations or what?
Yeah. I don't remember if somebody had, say, 5 days and you said, I'm going to give you 2 days. You know, I think most of the requests were somewhat smaller in nature, and so
I think the only one I noticed you gave everybody, what they asked for was the town clerk, assistant clerk. I think you authorized 140%. Oh, you gave her 140% of what was requested versus the town clerk you didn't give her 100%. So, I mean, in that kind of situation, what were you thinking?
I think the town clerks got slammed with the primary and the election, and then everything. You know, their office is pretty darn busy with all the real estate transactions. So I think people were given, I think those two individuals were given what they requested or what the supervisor said. Maybe you and I can have it.
That's one thing that jumped out at me, because those two people working in the same office didn't get the same amount.
Well, as opposed to just trying to discuss this in the meeting, why don't you just call me?
I'm bringing it up just in the light that it was shared in transparent government. It is on email from our finance director, so I do think this is the relevant place to talk about it and get it on the record. I don't know exactly what was going on. I'm not part of that conversation or haven't been, but since it was shared to us by our finance director, I think it behooves you, given that these people in town hall are not unionized, to have a system, something that maybe you might have to document of why you made the decisions you made, because it does look kind of interesting to me when I looked at it quickly versus the people that got 100% of what they asked for and those that did not. So that's why I'm bringing that up. The other thing that our finance director shared with us is we approved some money for HR consultant in her email to us, it said something about hiring somebody, personnel, as opposed to maybe a consultant, but I'm not sure that's what she meant. And I know that we had a motion several months ago about a commitment to get surveys done by the end of the last fiscal year. So I'm just following up on our finance director's question on that. We're working on that now. We haven't selected a firm, but that'll be happening very shortly to sit down and start and get some direction. The survey will probably be the first thing, and then analyzing what outside assistance would be helpful for all the departments in a way of personnel processing, if you will. So if we have somebody being hired or they leave, or we don't really have terminations, but you know, people come and go and other things happen to make, I think the finance area was eager to have some help in handling different aspects of it.
So I think once we get the survey, then we can start looking to say, okay, how's the best way to, what has to be done? And talk to them, of course, and say, what do you do? I know the Selectmen's office issues offering letters of employment, but obviously the finance office process after somebody is hired, so we can see what the time constraint is and what the capabilities are, and perhaps figure out. I think the Board of Finance was very receptive to having a firm or an individual serve as a consultant almost in the background, so when something came along that needed help, why they could come and help us out. So survey and then the HR resource, if you will. So
is this something that's going out to bid, or?
Yeah, I think certainly you would you'd get some names of capable outfits to do the survey, and then you'd also, if there were individuals or companies to help us on the HR resource side of it, that would be a separate process as well.
So in the timeline on this?
I think the survey we should probably get somebody to help us with the wage and salary survey, I should think within a quarter, to have somebody committed to go, and they would look through what we have and give us a proposal, because there are job descriptions and other documentation. I think it's in the finance office, so that would need to be reviewed and see where we are, because it's probably been a long time since that work has been done. So if we...
So you're getting, the Selectmen's office, the first Selectmen's office then is going to go through a bid process to bring in an HR consultant. Does that sound
I would say the salary survey task.
Okay.
Then are we going to get a consultant, or are we going to get a firm?
There'd be almost like two separate things. One would be, I don't know that an outfit that would do a wage and salary survey would necessarily be suitable to be a resource to come in and help with HR stuff. I remember when we had Bill Swords way long ago, and he came in and updated it every year. And so it was focused on that. And he would sample towns of similar size and character and so forth. But it wasn't like he'd come in and handle the HR nitty-gritty. So it seems to me, I'm not a personnel person, but we would explore what's the best way to go about this, and if it is to have two separate tasks, then so be it. And then the survey would be corroborate where people are, whether they're properly compensated, and then the HR thing would be kind of an ongoing, as you hire and lose people, help out.
Okay, so there might be two RFPs then.
I think so.
Out. Okay.
That would be. There's someone I'd like to talk to that would not probably be a person to do this, but might have some good ideas. If they're in the field, and they might say, "You're right. That's a good way to go about it," or you might want to think about this. So we'll find out.
All right, and then you said we had a new mail system, or a new system. I'm assuming it's the mail system mentioned earlier. So are we up on a new email system now?
Mm-hmm.
Is there going to be some information going out to the selectmen? I mean, obviously, I didn't get your email, so.
I'll have to.
Do we get training? I mean, are people going to be trained?
Well, it's Outlook. So the one thing that I don't see just yet is the the files that you put the emails in after you've read them, that hasn't come over yet. So
does our existing email system still work?
I can't hear you, that thing.
Does the existing email system still work?
You can look at it. You can't receive and send. It comes through Outlook now. But my question is, if you get an email about SoundView and you have the SoundView folder, you can't drag and drop it into the folder. So I'm looking forward to that step. And Connecticut Computing's still in the building, so you're asking the wrong person.
Well,
in terms of,
okay, maybe maybe you should, I don't know, I guess maybe you need to call us to make sure we got the information in the meeting.
Yeah, call Norin, Michelle Norin.
Okay. Tantamahog Road keeps coming up, and
the what?
Tantamahog Road issues keep coming up. The last time we talked, I believe, as a board, you had a final draft letter that you were going to send out to Mr. Frampton. We never saw the final.
That was a long
time ago.
Right.
We never saw the final. Did that go out
to
him? Did he sign it? Or?
I don't know if it was just a letter. I don't think it said return receipt. The new thing is it's time for the signage. So we're going to get a hold of a sign company, and there'll be a sign on the gate, a sign at the intersection just behind the gate, and one down where the driveway rejoins, and some signage for the parking. So that verbiage has been put in a letter, and so we'll get some decent signage in there. And
is this another letter, or the original letter is this another letter that he received that you sent?
He's received a letter.
That's the one we talked about.
I'm so confused.
So he received the first letter, or the only letter.
Yeah, he got the letter, talked about what signs were going to say and all that.
So what happens if they don't cooperate? Because it sounds like they're not.
I don't get that impression. I talked to him. I actually met him last week, and so I said,
the neighbors think differently.
Yeah. Well, there was an issue with a trailer of some sort, and so that's been moved. But so the signage, I think, is the thing to get set up. We'll be approaching the swallow season again, and so I think I think the people coming to the property, I don't think that's been a problem in terms of people other than the trailer in a way stuff, but I think it's been fairly uneventful as far as I can understand.
To Chris's point, the neighbors say otherwise. The neighbors are saying they're getting feedback from the owner that he owns that is not town property. He has documentation to support
well,
that.
That needs to be reviewed for sure.
I didn't hear about documentation, but yeah.
Well, I think he's done some title work, but until everyone agrees, I don't think there is an agreement.
No.
So, and if there was an issue, I don't think that he would be of a mind to close it off if he was right and say this is not town.
I think differently.
I don't know.
Well, I think we got to get some teeth down there.
The step would be to try to understand what he's asserting and see if
why don't we start with the signs? Make sure the signs get up.
The signs for sure, and then review whatever information that might dispute the town's title.
I don't have a good feeling about it. So. And then finally, I just wanted to share that I attended the workshop for the senior center improvements. They're working with their architect designers, and it was really a very well-run workshop. I believe there's a follow-up coming up in which the architect presented the group with maps of the senior center, and we went through steps on what we liked and what we would like to see improved. And I believe they collated all that data, and I think they're sending it out to everybody for your review and information. But it was really, really well done and very well attended. And I think the long and short of it was, just looking at it quickly, was that the majority of the participants in the workshop believe that the senior center is viable, needed, and does need improvements, additional space for all the programs that they currently provide to our seniors for 55 and up, and for the future. So if you haven't seen it, it's really worth taking a look at.
Aren't they having another workshop coming up?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is it going to be a repeat, or is it something new?
I think it is a follow-up, but the information that I think Jerry Baker was having everything sent out on a summary of everything, so it should be available to everybody to look at it.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see that.
Mm-hmm. That's all I have.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Okay, it's 6:18. Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Nice to see the ACs working well.
Yeah, it's feast and famine sometimes.
What was the name of the man who was there with Edie?
Howard Margulis, Margules. He's the chairman of the Economic Development Commission, and he's on this Halls Road Improvement Committee. Both. Yeah. Chris, you get this.